This is my cemetery here. A couple months back in town, I was asked to be
Sextus? Is that what it's called?
well, I'm actually the secretary, treasurer, and acting sexton, and I keep it going basically. All my family's buried there, so it's something that I wanted to do someday. When I got the minutes, I found minutes in there that were done by Heinz, my grandfather. Then I found minutes that were done by Heinz, my father. And some of those minutes by Heinz, my father, were done in really nice handwriting. That was Heinz's handwriting. She did them for my father. So see this house here, this is the house my grandfather built. And we lived there when I was about 7 to 10 years old. And this house with the columns, oh my goodness, look at the traffic. This is where my father was born. Good afternoon, folks. How are you?
Okay, how are you?
Good. And this was Heinz Road at one time. When they put names on the streets that came out as Brewster Road, but I've got documentation that refers to Heinz Road. And this was Heinz Pond over in here. There's obviously no pond now, but I lived in that house. That's when I was about 4. I lived in half the houses in town here.
Okay.
So let's take a look here at the schoolhouse.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the old B.B. Hill Schoolhouse. It was built early 1800s. It burned down. It was rebuilt in 1858. This is owned by the town of Canaan, Falls Village. And it's got special significance for me because in 1905, my Aunt Dora was a first grader here at this school. And there's a picture over there of her with the first grade class. And in 1918, the school was closed. And when the school closed in 1918, one of the teachers, at only 19 years of age, 18 actually, was Dora Hale, my aunt. My father went to school down at D.M. Hunt Library, but he also had my Aunt Dora as a teacher, and the story was that he could not understand how 1 and 3 could be 4, and 2 plus 2 could be 4. And in anger one day he waited for her at the door to the kitchen, and when she came in he beat her with a stick. So that was my father. Not a great student, but he was a brilliant man.
What was his occupation?
He worked for Hartford Electric Light Company. He was a foreman of transmission, the big power lines that go between the towns. That's what he did. He maintained those lines.
Around here?
He had a crew that did that. He figured out what transistors are in the 50s, and in the early 60s, before he passed away, he developed used a Wheatstone bridge, which is a transistor configuration, to develop an automated service to kick a line back in if it had been knocked out by a storm. So they could do it from Hartford rather than send a crew out to Torrington to do it. But very smart guy. Anyways, this is the old schoolhouse with some of the old furniture they would have used. I don't have any other stories about this.
Okay.
We open it during the summer for tours. Every Saturday morning, somebody's here so people can come in and see it. Now, if you come out back, and I don't have anything else to talk about in here. If you come out back here with me, I've got a story to tell here. This field down here, you want to look over this way, is one of Falls Village's proudest achievements, I think. We're going to go down to the village and I'll show you the green where we used to play baseball. But we used to break a lot of windows. I think Terry Blass told you that story. And so in 1958, our parents got together and they built a Little League field right down here. We were very lucky our parents did that. Those were the parents that came home from the war. I talked a minute about the veterans.
The what?
The veterans who came back
The
who were our
veterans.
parents. They
Yeah,
came
World
back
War
from
II.
World War II.
veterans. Yeah.
They brought a lot of problems back with them, and they hadn't invented PTSD yet, but they sure had it. They dealt with it by drinking, most of them. There were bars all over the area. I mean, I counted 6 bars that I could count in Canaan, 6 more bars right over in Millerton, and there was no shortage in between. We go from periods where things flourish and the town blossoms and good things happen, and then it seems to go idle, and we wait again for the people to come around that will help get things moving again. I think it's moving now. I hope it is.
Yeah. Good.
Now, we used to ride down this hill on our bicycles. Of course, no brakes. Heading down to the green because the green was the center of our life. I mean, we didn't stay at home. I mean, when I was little, we didn't even have a TV. We got one when I was about 8. So let's take a look here. This isn't the green we played on. I mean, all these trees are new. See, there were no trees in here to get in the way. But the green had windows all across there too. And like Terry told you, we knocked a lot of windows out. So Al made us go up and play up in that corner, which had home base way over in the corner over there. We still managed to break windows, so I guess that's why they built us a Little League field. This is where we come every day after school. We play baseball in the spring and summer. We'd play football in the fall. In the winter, we'd come here too, because we had a trail that came down through the woods. And we'd come all the way down here, and we'd race with our sleds. We'd actually time ourselves. Of course, that was, especially the timing was big in the years of the Olympics. You know, this was our luge run. We spent a lot of hours here on the green. And we weren't here, I mean, this was our meeting place. From here, we would go other places. Like over the tracks. You see over there by the caboose?
Yeah.
There's a trail that went over the tracks right there. And then went down over the hill to Terry Blass's house. That's how we'd get down to visit them. We used to spend a lot of time at the inn. My parents were regulars there. They were good friends with the Jensens, and I got to tell you the story about the time we'd been playing on the green here, had a game of tag going and stuff, but it got dark and we heard the train coming, so we ran over here by where that caboose is, and you grab a handful of stones, and as a freight train goes by, you know, you just throw the stones at the freight train. I mean, what are you going to hurt, right? A freight train? Well, one evening after throwing stones at the train, we were in the office watching television, and a young officer named Peter Lawson came in. My parents were with him. They wanted to know if we knew anything about kids throwing stones over on the tracks, because a stone had gone through the window of the caboose and hit a guy in the back of the neck and knocked him out until he got to Danbury. Yes, we did it. We knew better than to lie. We just fessed up right away. We threw stones and we did it. In the garage, we spent a lot of hours there fixing our bikes.
You would bring your bikes in and just work on them yourselves?
Well, we'd ride down there, yeah, and borrow a wrench or borrow some air. Or the doors were open, so we'd kind of wander in until old Joe would get mad and kick us out. But, I mean, everybody knew us in town. It wasn't like today when you see somebody you don't know who they are and they've been here for 20 years. But everybody knew everybody, and everybody took care of everybody. So there's a group of people like that in the village right now. We're coming up here on the powerhouse, and I wanted to come down here because the powerhouse was important to my family. The powerhouse came online in like 1916 or so, I think it was. My grandfather was the machinist. This was his machine shop. That's what I'm trying to say. Thanks for the help. Right in here, his lathe, the old milling machine, those things are still in there now. When a part broke, they couldn't just call out for it. So my grandfather would use those machines and he would create a new part on them. He started working here when it first opened. My father was born a couple years later in 1917. And when he was old enough to go to work, he went to work for the power company. We used to go in there when I was a kid because, you know, my father was part of the in crew. I could still remember the smells in there. They haven't changed at all. It's the smell of the river. And I'm going to take you down here to the bridge. This is the new bridge now. The old bridge was an iron bridge too. It made for fun at Halloween. There was a certain group of kids who used to bring a can of gasoline down here to the iron bridge every fall, Halloween, and set the iron bridge on fire.
Oh gosh.
Well, it didn't burn much. It was an iron bridge, you know. Probably didn't help the tar, the asphalt. And this is where we spent many, many hours. This part of the river. When I was 8 years old, whoops, I better move. When I was 8 years old, my mother allowed for the first time for my brother and I to come to the river fishing alone. So at 8 years old, we would leave the house at 8:30, as soon as we could get ready in the morning. And we would be gone probably until, well, we were supposed to be home at 6 o'clock for dinner. But, you know, sometimes you just got busy and you just couldn't quite make it.
You did a lot of fishing here.
We did a lot of fishing here. We caught all sorts of fish. We caught, let's see, rock bass, bluegills, sunfish, black bass, white perch and yellow perch, catfish, bullheads, suckers, an occasional trout, dace, and shiners. I'm sure I left something out. All sorts of fish in here. This is the river. Many good hours we spent down here. I mean, I first started coming here with my father when we were, I don't know, I was 4 years old, I know, when I caught my first trout. That wasn't here, but it would be a regular thing. He'd come home from work, and we got so we knew we'd have worms dug ahead of time. And we'd take the worms and we'd come down here to the barn, which is right down here. We just go down and fish for a while. I mean, we weren't catching trout back then. There were very few trout up in this section of the river. But rock bass and perch, they were good eating.
That's what you do? You bring them home and your mom would cook them?
We'd clean them up and cook them, yep. And what we didn't clean, well, it got to the point where we were catching so many fish that, I mean, we'd bring home, ride our bikes home, and the baskets would be full of fish. Now I'm talking particular in a place we call the Honey Hole, which is the pond on Route 126 on the way to the Point of Rocks. It splits, there's a bridge on, and it's split on both sides of the road. That was always called the Honey Hole. And we would take our bikes up there fishing. And one year the water was high and there was a hatch of bullheads. There were so many bullheads that there were channels out into the field which drained, and they left puddles with bullheads in them. And we'd just catch them with our hands. But we'd fill our baskets, and you bring them home, and you know, you'd clean 10, 12 of them. You got 15 more. Okay, so what do? You take them out and you dig a hole in the garden, and you make fertilizer out of them. And we had a lot of fertilizer. There was no such thing for us as catch and release. I mean, it wasn't going to happen. We caught a huge snapping turtle in there one time. It must have been 40 pounds. Warren Blast was part of that. Warren was part of most of what I did when I was little. I mean, Warren moved to town when we were 7, and popsicles cost a nickel back then. And if we got a nickel, that's what we'd do. We'd get a popsicle. Nice thing was you could split them, you know. There was the 2 sticks, and you could break them in half, and that's what we did when we got a nickel. Warren and I would split a popsicle. Shall we take a ride now?
Sure.
We'll go back up and see if there's a crowd up there in the village. Just going to give you all the houses that I lived in.
Okay.
Here's the front of this one. Beautiful old house. This was the greenhouse it used to be. I lived in there when I was 15 and 16. when I was 11, 12, I lived in this house. This is now the parsonage. Hi, Joycey. Anyways, that's about it for the houses in town that I lived in, but I think that was enough.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to try to head back to my house now. I think that's it for the road trip. I lived up here until the middle of the 80s, at which time I got a job doing computers for Cigna, and it took me down to Bloomfield, so this was too long a commute. I was actually working for a plumber, Jim Casey, in Salisbury, and I started to go to school in East Hartford, and I would travel at 4:30 I'd get out of work, and at quarter after 6 I'd be in East Hartford for my CPI computer course, and after 6 months I got a job at Cigna Insurance. Did that for over 30 years. It was good to me.
Good.
Met my wife. That's where I met my wife. That was good for me too.
What's her name?
Donna. The community loves her, and she loves the community. She's part of the church. She's part of the library. She's got her friends that she goes to the Y to go swimming with. I'm happy for her.
Good. That's important.
And for me, I mean, it's coming home for me. I mean, I tell people I didn't get very far because I grew up just down from the other side of the cemetery, and I only made it to this side of the cemetery, so I didn't get very far in life, but I guess I'm satisfied.
Good. What do you like most about Falls Village?
It's a community where people care for each other, and we do for each other.
In what way, for example?
In what way? Well, let's see. Donna had hip replacement surgery at the end of February, and her first day home from the hospital, we had a meal from Aki, and then Pauline came around with a meal for us, and the Hatzels brought us a meal, and I don't want to get started, Savannah too. I mean, it's just like everybody goes out of their way to take care of each other. I enjoy that, and I enjoy caring for people. It's going to sound weird, but one of my favorite things now is to help people who are dealing with medical issues, specifically cancer. I like to help by giving rides or whatever I can. It's very selfish because I just feel so good after doing that. It's very selfish for me, but I enjoy doing it.
Well, it's not entirely selfish. You're helping others and making them feel good.
I am helping others, but I get so much from it. That's why it makes me feel like it's a selfish thing. Yeah. I mean, there's stories, probably too sad to tell mostly, but I mean...
people looking out for each other?
Yeah.
Like in the last stages of life? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you about Ben Harmon. Ben had cancer return. He was son of one of my best friends, Rick Harmon. And he had cancer return. And I'd offered to take him for treatment to New Haven if he needed it any time. Amazingly, one day he called me and said his ride for the following day couldn't make it. Could I take him? And so I said sure. And I took him a couple times, and we developed a friendship that was stronger than I'd known him since he was a little kid, but I began to know him in a different way. I was able to give him comfort when he was at his lowest point. I mean, he allowed me to give him a massage. For a man to allow another man to do that, I mean,
It was a beautiful thing. And Ben passed, but in tragedies like that, I find I have to take something positive away. And what I took away from that is that, and I'm going to tell you, don't ever hesitate to ask somebody if you can help them.
Well, you're helping me a lot today doing this.
Well,
And we've been talking about it for quite a while.
yeah.
But it's been worth waiting for.
Well,
It's nice.
you
I
help the
appreciate it.
village by recording this. I mean, you've recorded some people that are the heart and soul of this town. Bill Dickinson. I mean, you look at him, the man doesn't look like, he looks like he did 40 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, and I've known Bill all my life. People go through changes in life and it's not all good. But at this point, Bill is a great guy. Love him.
Is
He's
his
got so many
wife doing
stories.
okay, Marie?
Not well.
Not well.
She's not well at all. That's what Bill does now. He just goes and spends his time with her.
Uh-huh.
She's up a gear.
Here,
And,
yeah.
that's what Bill does during the day. He used to stop at the gas station every morning with us. Now it's a rare appearance that we value.
Uh-huh. Do you still stop at
Oh yeah. There's no gas, but they still have coffee. So
coffee? You, Steve Dean.
Steve Dean, Terry Blass, Jimmy Holcomb. You interviewed Jim.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Jim and I went to school together. We're regulars there. Norm Wycott comes down from the mountain occasionally. We hope they get gas back. It's an important business for this town. I mean,
Well,
just to be able to get a gallon of milk if you need it.
Yeah.
So,
Some of the other ways people in town look out for one another.
well, I mean, people participate. Now, you know, there's a lot of houses that are empty during the week. You see them. There are houses that are owned by people in New York City, and they're a nice place for them to come and spend the weekend, a couple weeks in the summer. But they're not here during the week. But Henry Todd, our first selectman, gave a statistic recently that there's 200 volunteers in town. I mean, we only have 1,000 people at Falls Village, and yet 200 of them volunteer. That's pretty extraordinary.
Yeah.
I mean, whether it's volunteering at the church or the fire department, the library. I mean, those are our community organizations. That's where we come together and share things. The library especially. I mean, it's not about the books there. I mean, libraries are much more than books now anyways, but it's about the events that we come together. You go to these events, whether it's a children's concert at the Children's Theater or a showing at the library. I mean, we come together, we have a bite to eat, and we talk and we tell stories. I mean, heavens, we haven't seen each other in 2 or 3 weeks. So. It's a good feeling, it really is. Whether it's the bingo at the school for the scholarship fund or the lasagna supper for the 8th grade trip. We like to do all of them. The taco dinner. It's when you get to see the other people in town. And these people, I mean, there's so many people in town who were here when I grew up. Hazel, McGuire. I remember Hazel playing the xylophone in the band. You've heard about our band. The Falls Village Fire Department
marching band.
Yes.
Sure.
I think I started playing in that when I was 8 or 9. And I mean, it was great because we'd practice, and then we'd come summer, we'd go to all the parades in the area, and that meant you got to ride home on the bus, you know, and maybe you'd sit with a girl on the way home or something, you know. And again, it flourished when I was a kid. I was lucky. Our parents did things, and they got things going for us. So, well, we've let our kids not participate in things now. It's a shame. We pacify them with electronics. It keeps them out of our hair. I'm not very popular because when my grandsons or the nephews or nieces come here, they put the electronics away. You've got a few minutes? I want them. I want to enjoy you. So, and we do. We have all the holidays here. My wife loves it. She cooks. We have anywhere from 20 to 25 people who'll be here for Christmas, Easter, Thanksgiving, and usually a picnic during the summer too.
What are some of your earliest memories of hunting with your dad?
Well, I started hunting when I was 12 years old.
Uh-huh.
I mean, we'd learned to shoot before that. In fact, one of the houses, we got a Crossman 22 caliber pellet gun for Christmas, and Dad set up a shooting range in the basement of the house. Yep. So we learned to shoot when we were little. We always had respect for guns. In fact, my son, I never let him play with guns. You know, when I was a kid, everybody had cap guns, you know,
Sure.
and a holster and maybe even a Davy Crockett hat. But I didn't let my son play with guns. And I don't regret that, but what I did when he was 8 years old, and I still do that with all the kids, my grandsons and the nephews and nieces too, when they're 8 years old, they get to learn to shoot. And that means I go get my BB gun, and we go out, and I go through the fact that it's a weapon, that you can hurt people with it, and rules like you never point it at something you don't intend to shoot, you never point it at a person. And then eventually, after listening to me for probably 10 or 15 minutes, they get to shoot the gun. And I teach them how to shoot. Maybe they'll hit something, maybe not. But invariably in that first lesson, they do something wrong. They point the gun in a direction they shouldn't, or they don't put it on safe, or whatever. Oh, we got to stop now, to emphasize that it's serious. Somebody could be hurt. Then we put the gun away until the next time they come over and they get to hear the lesson again and shoot again. And I teach gun safety. I mean, I call it, you want to learn to shoot, but it's really teaching them gun safety. I think it's important.
Sure.
So yeah, when I was, actually the first time I went hunting was not with my father. It was with our neighbor, Ted Bailey. And Ted took me hunting over near Twin Lakes, and we heard a pheasant in this swale, so he stood on the outside edge and sent me and the dog in. So we basically had two dogs go into the swale, and at 12 years old, I wasn't near as big as I am now, and the reeds were just about up to my eyes, and I'm walking through these reeds, and all of a sudden, as far away as you are, 3 feet from me, this cock pheasant breaks in front of me, scared the hell out of me, brought my arms up like this, pow, and the bird came down. Oh, what a piece of cake. I don't think I got another bird for 10 years after that. But we went hunting. We'd hunt with my father, especially up in the swamp up here. The Great Swamp up in the northern end of it, we would go. I don't think we ever got anything with my father. But as I only got to hunt with him for 4 years, he passed away when I was 16. He had a heart attack, very unexpected, and very difficult. We were going to a football game. We just moved to Granby. He'd gotten a promotion with Hartford Electric Light Company. And we moved to East Granby 3 weeks prior. I finished up a course at Trinity College for the summer. I was only in high school. And the first Saturday night, we were going to watch a football game in Hartford. And we only made it about 5 miles from home, and Dad pulled over saying he didn't feel good. And it was so bad that he had me drive home. And we got home and called the ambulance. Bill was 15, I was 16, performed CPR rather, on him. I was giving him mouth to mouth, and Bill was doing chest compressions. And we kept him alive until the ambulance got there, but there was no saving him, not with the techniques and tools they had back then. He passed away that night. We moved back from East Granby immediately. That was August the 22nd, and we were back in Canaan for school in September. That was my senior year. It was very difficult for Mom. She went through a number of years where she struggled with life. She moved to Hartford. And I was actually going to school in Hartford. I went to Trinity College.
Oh.
I got a full scholarship that was offered by Hartford Electric Light Company, which is the company my father worked for, to one of their employees' children. I think the fact that he had died the year before gave me a little advantage. But I got a full scholarship to Trinity. I managed to make it in 4 years, and I got my degree. But I was there in Hartford too, so she wasn't alone. My sister is 4 years younger. The two of them lived together in Hartford. Bill went into the service about that time.
Really?
Yep. And then I taught for 8 years.
Computer science?
No, it was before we owned anything. Nobody knew about computers. I think this was 1970.
What did you teach?
Science and biology.
No kidding.
Yeah.
You're a well-rounded individual, Dick.
Yeah, I taught for a while. Then I became summers, I mowed lawns for a couple of years, but then I got to work for Alan Bierce up here, because I had moved back up to this area. And so I thought I knew carpentry. And I went to work, when I left teaching in '78, I was at the top of the pay scale in Hartford, and with 8 years experience, and I was making $13,000. And I remember looking at Gil Stewart. Gil was 45. I figured Gil should be in the prime of his career, and Gil's making $13,000, same as I am. What the hell is that to look forward to? So I lined up some work, and I gave up teaching. My work lasted from May until January, and then it just died. We hit the economy tanked, and I had no work. So I managed in that winter to go through my entire teacher retirement savings. It wasn't much, it was a few thousand, but so I was a carpenter for a while, then I was a plumber for a while. I bought myself I bought the kids a computer for Christmas in 1984. And the games weren't very good, so they had no interest in it, but I taught myself to learn to program in the language BASIC that was on that computer, and I was fascinated with it. So while I was plumbing, I took a course in Winston at the community college, and I did very well there. In fact, we had to bring some code in, and the professor looked at my code, and the following week she wanted to talk to me. Why are you in this course? I said, well, I thought I had an aptitude. I liked doing it. She says, no, why are you in this course? She says, I have nothing to teach you. I did have an aptitude for it, and I took off at Cigna. 2 years in, and I was assistant director of sales systems already. Cigna was very good to me. I always figured I would just become a consultant and make the big money, but Cigna basically headed it off. They just made me a director right away, and It was a very different company back then. I was, 3 steps from the top. 30 years, it worked out good. Got a pension. And now I'm retired and just sitting back and doing nothing, right?
How old were you when you had your first girlfriend?
6.
Really?
Yeah. Iris Reamer. See, I lived on the sand road in first grade, up where the kennels are, and the bus would go up Belden Street, and the Reamers lived on Belden Street in the house across from the Pavials, and she would get on the bus, and they would go up and go over Boyne Hill and come back down Sand Road, and she would have a seat for me, and she would save me, like she would have maybe a lifesaver or a piece of gum, and then same thing in the afternoon. This is first grade. I didn't go to kindergarten because we lived out of town. In the afternoon, she'd jump on the bus and she'd save the back seat for me in first grade, and she'd have something, a lifesaver. And that lasted until the end of the school year, when she had a birthday party. And at that birthday party, I was looking for her, and I see her. We're only 6. Well, she turned 7. She's paddling up the river with Ronnie Segal. That was it. We were done. First grade. Let's see, second grade was Julie Borneman. The third grade was Beth Eamsey. I mean, there weren't many girls in town, so there was about 14 kids in my first grade class. And we did that with the second grade, first and second together. And that's the way it went through school. That little school over there was much smaller than it is now. There was only 4 classrooms, but they had a classroom down at the library too.
Lee Kellogg.
Yep. That was it.
Okay, that's good.
All right?
Thank you, Dick.
You're welcome, Eric. It's a pleasure. I'm sorry it took so long for us to get this to happen.
It's worth waiting for.
Well, we'll see when you get it pieced together.